the fifth battle at the ships, and the axe of Ajax. Jupiter, awaking, sees the Trojans repulsed from the trenches, Hector in a swoon, and Neptune at the head of the Greeks. He is highly incensed at the artifice of Juno, who appeases him by her submissions. She is then sent to Iris and Apollo. Juno, repairing to the assembly of the gods, attempts with extraordinary address to incense them against Jupiter. In particular, she touches Mars with a violent resentment. He is ready to take arms, but is prevented by Minerva. Iris and Apollo obey the orders of Jupiter. Iris commands Neptune to leave the battle, to which, after much reluctance and passion, he consents. Apollo re-inspires Hector with vigor, brings him back to the battle, marches before him with his aegis, and turns the fortune of the fight. He breaks down great part of the Grecian wall. The Trojans rush in and attempt to fire the first line of the fleet, but are, as yet, repelled by the greater Ajax with a prodigious slaughter. Now in swift flight they pass the trench profound, and many a chief lay gasping on the ground, then stopped and panted, where the chariots lie fear on their cheek and horror in their eye. Meanwhile, awakened from his dream of love, on Ida's summit sat imperial Jove. Round the wide fields he cast a careful view, there saw the Trojans fly, the Greeks pursue, these proud in arms, those scattered o'er the plain, and, midst the war, the monarch of the main. Not far, great Hector on the dust he spies, his sad associates round with weeping eyes, ejecting blood, and panting yet for breath, his senses wandering to the verge of death. The god beheld him with a pitying look, and thus, incensed, to fraudful Juno spoke. O thou, still adverse to the eternal will, forever studious in promoting ill. Thy arts have made the godlike Hector yield, and driven his conquering squadrons from the field. Canst thou, unhappy in thy wiles, withstand our power immense, and brave the almighty hand? Hast thou forgot, when, bound and fixed on high from the vast concave of the spangled sky, I hung thee trembling in a golden chain, and all the raging gods opposed in vain? Headlong I hurled them from the Olympian hall, stunned in the whirl, and breathless with the fall. For godlike Hercules these deeds were done, nor seemed the vengeance worthy such a son. When, by thy wiles induced, fierce Boreas tossed the shipwrecked hero on the Cone coast, him through 1,000 forms of death I bore, and sent to Argos and his native shore. Hear this, remember, and our fury dread, nor pull the unwilling vengeance on thy head, lest arts and blandishments successless prove, thy soft deceits and well-dissembled love. The Thunderer spoke, imperial Juno mourned, and, trembling, these submissive words returned. By every oath that powers immortal ties, the foodful earth and all-enfolding skies by thy black waves, tremendous Styx, that flow through the drear realms of gliding ghosts, below by the dread honors of thy sacred head, and that unbroken vow, our virgin bed. Not by my arts the ruler of the main steeps Troy in blood, and ranges round the plain, by his own ardor, his own pity swayed, to help his Greeks, he fought and disobeyed. Else had thy Juno better counsels given, and taught submission to the Sire of heaven. Think'st thou with me, fair Empress of the skies? The immortal Father with a smile replies, then soon the haughty sea-god shall obey, nor dare to act but when we point the way. If truth inspires thy tongue, proclaim our will to yon bright synod on the Olympian hill. Our high decree let various Iris know, and call the god that bears the silver bow. Let her descend, and from the embattled plain command the sea-god to his watery reign, while Phoebus hastes great Hector to prepare to rise afresh, and once more wake the war. His laboring bosom re-inspires with breath, and calls his senses from the verge of death. Greece chased by Troy, even to Achilles' fleet, shall fall by thousands at the hero's feet. He, not untouched with pity, to the plain shall send Patroclus, but shall send in vain. What youths he slaughters under Ilion's walls! Even my loved son, divine Sarpedon, falls. Vanquished at last by Hector's lance he lies. Then nor till then shall great Achilles rise, and lo! That instant, godlike Hector dies. From that great hour, the war's whole fortune turns, Pallas assists, and lofty Ilion burns. Not till that day shall Jove relax his rage, nor one of all the heavenly host engage in aid of Greece. The promise of a god I gave, and sealed it with the almighty nod, Achilles, glory to the stars to raise, Such was our word, and fate the word obeys. The trembling queen, the almighty order given, swift from the Idaean summit shot to heaven. As some wayfaring man, who wanders o'er in thought a length of lands he trod before, sends forth his active mind from place to place, joins hill to dale, and measures space with space. So swift flew Juno to the blessed abodes, if thought of man can match the speed of gods. There sat the powers in awful synod placed, they bowed, and made obeisance as she passed through all the brazen dome. With goblets crowned they hail her queen, the nectar streams around. Fair Themis first presents the golden bowl, and anxious asks what cares disturb her soul. To whom the white-armed goddess thus replies, "Enough thou know'st the tyrant of the skies, severely bent his purpose to fulfill, unmoved his mind, and unrestrained his will. Go thou, the feasts of heaven attend thy call, bid the crowned nectar circle round the hall. But Jove shall thunder through the ethereal dome such stern decrees, such threatened woes to come, as soon shall freeze mankind with dire surprise, and damp the eternal banquets of the skies." The goddess said, and sullen took her place. Black horror saddened each celestial face. To see the gathering grudge in every breast, smiles on her lips a spleenful joy expressed, while on her wrinkled front, an eyebrow bent, sat steadfast care, and lowering discontent. Thus she proceeds, "Attend, ye powers above. But no, 'tis madness to contest with Jove, supreme he sits, and sees in pride of sway. Your vassal godheads grudgingly obey, fierce in the majesty of power controls, shakes all the thrones of heaven, and bends the poles. Submiss, immortals. All he wills obey, and thou, great Mars, begin and show the way. Behold Ascalaphus. Behold him die, but dare not murmur, dare not vent a sigh. Thy own loved boasted offspring lies o'erthrown, if that loved boasted offspring be thy own. Stern Mars, with anguish for his slaughtered son, smote his rebelling breast, and fierce begun. Thus then, immortals. Thus shall Mars obey. Forgive me, gods, and yield my vengeance way. Descending first to yon forbidden plain, the god of battles dares avenge the slain, dares, though the thunder bursting o'er my head should hurl me blazing on those heaps of dead. With that he gives command to fear, and flight to join his rapid coursers for the fight. Then grim in arms, with hasty vengeance flies arms that reflect a radiance through the skies. And now had Jove, by bold rebellion driven, discharged his wrath on half the host of heaven. But Pallas, springing through the bright abode, starts from her azure throne to calm the god. Struck for the immortal race with timely fear, from frantic Mars she snatched the shield and spear. Then the huge helmet lifting from his head, thus to the impetuous homicide she said, "By what wild passion furious art thou tossed? Strivest thou with Jove? Thou art already lost. Shall not the thunderer's dread command restrain, and was imperial Juno heard in vain? Back to the skies wouldst thou with shame be driven, and in thy guilt involve the host of heaven. Ilion and Greece no more should Jove engage. The skies would yield an ampler scene of rage. Guilty and guiltless find an equal fate, and one vast ruin whelm the Olympian state. Cease then thy offspring's death unjust to call. Heroes as great have died, and yet shall fall. Why should heaven's law with foolish man comply, exempted from the race ordained to die?" This menace fixed the warrior to his throne. Sullen he sat, and curbed the rising groan. Then Juno called Jove's orders to obey, the winged Iris, and the god of day. "Go wait the thunderers will," Saturnia cried, "on yon tall summit of the fountful Ide. There in the Father's awful presence stand, receive, and execute his dread command." She said and sat. The god that gilds the day and various Iris wing their airy way. Swift as the wind to Ida's hills they came, fair nurse of fountains and of savage game, there sat the Eternal, he whose nod controls the trembling world and shakes the steady poles. Veiled in a mist of fragrance him they found, with clouds of gold and purple circled round. Well pleased the thunderer saw their earnest care, and prompt obedience to the queen of air. Then, while a smile serenes his awful brow, commands the goddess of the showery bow, "Iris, descend, and what we here ordain, report to yon mad tyrant of the main. Bid him from fight to his own deeps repair, or breathe from slaughter in the fields of air. If he refuse, then let him timely weigh our elder birthright and superior sway. How shall his rashness stand the dire alarms, if heaven's omnipotence descend in arms? Strives he with me, by whom his power was given, and is there equal to the Lord of heaven? The Almighty spoke, the goddess winged her flight to sacred Ilion from the Idaean height. Swift as the rattling hail or fleecy snows drive through the skies, when Boreas fiercely blows, so from the clouds descending Iris falls, and to blue Neptune thus the goddess calls. Attend the mandate of the sire above. In me behold the messenger of Jove. He bids thee from forbidden wars repair to thine own deeps or to the fields of air. This if refused, he bids thee timely weigh his elder birthright and superior sway. How shall thy rashness stand the dire alarms, if heaven's omnipotence descend in arms? Strivest thou with him by whom all power is given? And art thou equal to the Lord of heaven? What means the haughty sovereign of the skies? The king of ocean thus, incensed, replies, rule as he will his portioned realms on high, no vassal god, nor of his train am I. Three brother deities from Saturn came, and ancient Rhea, Earth's immortal dame. Assigned by lot our triple rule we know, infernal Pluto sways the shades below o'er the wide clouds, and o'er the starry plain ethereal Jove extends his high domain. My court beneath the hoary waves I keep, and hush the roarings of the sacred deep. Olympus, and this earth in common lie, what claim has here the tyrant of the sky? Far in the distant clouds let him control, and awe the younger brothers of the pole, there to his children his commands be given, the trembling, servile, second race of heaven. And must I then, said she, O sire of floods, bear this fierce answer to the king of gods? Correct it yet, and change thy rash intent, a noble mind disdains not to repent. To elder brothers guardian fiends are given, to scourge the wretch insulting them, and heaven. Great is the profit, thus the god rejoined, when ministers are blessed with prudent mind. Warned by thy words, to powerful Jove I yield and quit, though angry, the contended field. Not but his threats with justice I disclaim. The same our honors, and our birth the same. If yet, forgetful of his promise given to Hermes, Pallas, and the Queen of Heaven, to favor Ilion, that perfidious place, he breaks his faith with half the ethereal race. Give him to know, unless the Grecian train lay yon proud structures level with the plain, howe'er the offense by other gods be past, the wrath of Neptune shall forever last. Thus speaking, furious from the field he strode, and plunged into the bosom of the flood. The Lord of thunders, from his lofty height beheld, and thus bespoke the source of light. Behold, the god whose liquid arms are hurled around the globe, whose earthquakes rock the world, desists at length his rebel war to wage, seeks his own seas, and trembles at our rage. Else had my wrath, heaven's thrones all shaking round, burned to the bottom of his seas profound, and all the gods that round old Saturn dwell had heard the thunders to the deeps of hell. Well was the crime, and well the vengeance spared, even power immense had found such battle hard. Go thou, my son. The trembling Greeks alarm, shake my broad aegis on thy active arm, be godlike Hector thy peculiar care, swell his bold heart, and urge his strength to war. Let Ilion conquer, till the Achaean train fly to their ships and Hellespont again, then Greece shall breathe from toils. The Godhead said, his will divine the son of Jove obeyed. Not half so swift the sailing falcon flies, that drives a turtle through the liquid skies, as Phoebus, shooting from the Idaean brow glides down the mountain to the plain below. There Hector seated by the stream he sees, his sense returning with the coming breeze, again his pulses beat, his spirits rise, again his loved companions meet his eyes. Jove thinking of his pains, they passed away, to whom the god who gives the golden day. Why sits great Hector from the field so far? What grief, what wound, withholds thee from the war? The fainting hero, as the vision bright stood shining o'er him, half unsealed his sight. What blessed immortal, with commanding breath, thus wakens Hector from the sleep of death? Has fame not told how, while my trusty sword bathed Greece in slaughter, and her battle gored, the mighty Ajax with a deadly blow had almost sunk me to the shades below? Even yet, methinks, the gliding ghosts I spy, and hell's black horrors swim before my eye. To him Apollo, be no more dismayed, see and be strong. The Thunderer sends thee aid. Behold, thy Phoebus shall his arms employ, Phoebus, propitious still to thee in Troy. Inspire thy warriors then with manly force, And to the ships impel thy rapid horse, even I will make thy fiery coursers way, and drive the Grecians headlong to the sea. Thus to bold Hector spoke the son of Jove, and breathed immortal ardor from above. As when the pampered steed, with reins unbound, breaks from his stall and pours along the ground, with ample strokes he rushes to the flood to bathe his sides, and cool his fiery blood, his head, now freed, he tosses to the skies. His mane dishevelled o'er his shoulders flies. He snuffs the females in the well-known plain, and springs, exulting, to his fields again, urged by the voice divine. Thus Hector flew, full of the god, and all his hosts pursue. As when the force of men and dogs combined invade the mountain goat, or branching hind, far from the hunter's rage secure they lie close in the rock, not fated yet to die, when lo, a lion shoots across the way. They fly, at once the chasers and the prey. So Greece that late in conquering troops pursued, and mark their progress through the ranks in blood, soon as they see the furious chief appear, forget to vanquish and consent to fear. Thoas with grief observed his dreadful course. Thoas, the bravest of the Aetolian force, skilled to direct the javelin's distant flight, and bold to combat in the standing fight, not more in counsels famed for solid sense, than winning words and heavenly eloquence. Gods! What portent, he cried, these eyes invades? Lo! Hector rises from the Stygian shades. We saw him, late, by thundering Ajax killed. What god restores him to the frighted field, and not content that half of Greece lies slain, pours new destruction on her sons again? He comes not, Jove. Without thy powerful will, lo. Still he lives, pursues, and conquers still. Yet hear my counsel, and his worst withstand. The Greeks, main body to the fleet command. But let the few whom brisker spirits warm stand the first onset and provoke the storm. Thus point your arms, and when such foes appear, fierce as he is, let Hector learn to fear. The warrior spoke, the listening Greeks obey, thickening their ranks and form a deep array. Each Ajax Teucer, Merion gave command, the valiant leader of the Cretan band, and Mars-like Megs. These the chiefs excite approach the foe, and meet the coming fight. Behind, unnumbered multitudes attend, to flank the navy, and the shores defend. Full on the front the pressing Trojans bear, and Hector first came towering to the war. Phoebus himself the rushing battle led, a veil of clouds involved his radiant head. High held before him, Jove's enormous shield portentous shone, and shaded all the field. Vulcan to Jove the immortal gift consigned, to scatter hosts and terrify mankind. The Greeks expect the shock. The clamors rise from different parts, and mingle in the skies. Dire was the hiss of darts, by heroes flung, and arrows leaping from the bowstring sung. These drink the life of generous warriors slain. Those guiltless fall, and thirst for blood in vain. As long as Phoebus bore unmoved the shield, sat doubtful conquest hovering o'er the field. But when aloft he shakes it in the skies, shouts in their ears, and lightens in their eyes, deep horror seizes every Grecian breast. Their force is humbled, and their fear confessed. So flies a herd of oxen, scattered wide, no swain to guard them, and no day to guide, when two fell lions from the mountain come, and spread the carnage through the shady gloom. Impending Phoebus pours around them fear, and Troy and Hector thunder in the rear. Heaps fall on heaps. The slaughter Hector leads, first great Arcesilas, then Stichius bleeds one to the bold Boeotians ever dear, and one Menestheus, friend and famed compeer. Medon and Iasus, Aeneas sped. This sprang from Phelus, and the Athenians led, but hapless Medon from Iliad came, him Ajax honored with a brother's name, though born of lawless love. From home expelled, a banished man, in Phylace he dwelled, pressed by the vengeance of an angry wife. Troy ends at last his labors and his life. Mesist's next Polydamas o'erthrew, and thee, brave Clonius, great Agenor slew. By Paris, Deiachus inglorious dies, pierced through the shoulder as he basely flies. Polite's arm laid Echius on the plain, stretched on one heap, the victors spoil the slain. The Greeks dismayed, confused, disperse or fall, some seek the trench, some skulk behind the wall. While these fly trembling, others pant for breath, and o'er the slaughter stalks gigantic death. On rushed bold Hector, gloomy as the night, forbids to plunder, animates the fight, points to the fleet. For, by the gods, who flies, who dares but linger, by this hand he dies. No weeping sister his cold eye shall close, no friendly hand his funeral pyre compose. Who stops to plunder at this signal hour, the birds shall tear him and the dogs devour. Furious he said, the smarting scourge resounds, the coursers fly, the smoking chariot bounds, the hosts rush on, loud clamors shake the shore, the horses thunder, earth and ocean roar. Apollo, planted at the trench's bound, pushed at the bank. Down sank the enormous mound, rolled in the ditch the heapy ruin lay, a sudden road. A long and ample way. O'er the dread fosse, a late impervious space now steeds and men and cars tumultuous pass. The wondering crowds the downward level trod, before them flamed the shield, and marched the god. Then with his hand he shook the mighty wall, and lo! The turrets nod, the bulwarks fall, easy as when ashore an infant stands, and draws imagined houses in the sands. The sportive wanton, pleased with some new play, sweeps the slight works and fashioned domes away. Thus vanished at thy touch, the towers and walls, the toil of thousands in a moment falls. The Grecians gaze around with wild despair, confused and weary all the powers with prayer. Exhort their men, with praises, threats, commands, and urge the gods, with voices, eyes, and hands. Experienced Nestor chief obtests the skies, and weeps his country with a father's eyes. O Jove! If ever, on his native shore, one Greek enriched thy shrine with offered gore, if e'er, in hope our country to behold, we paid the fattest firstlings of the fold, if e'er thou sign'st our wishes with thy nod, perform the promise of a gracious God. This day preserve our navies from the flame, and save the relics of the Grecian name. Thus prayed the sage, the Eternal gave consent, and peals of thunder shook the firmament. Presumptuous Troy mistook the accepting sign, and catched new fury at the voice divine. As when black tempests mix the seas and skies, the roaring deeps in watery mountains rise, above the sides of some tall ship ascend, its womb they deluge, and its ribs they rend, thus loudly roaring and o'erpouring all, mount the thick Trojans up the Grecian wall, legions on legions from each side arise. Thick sound the keels, the storm of arrows flies. Fierce on the ships above, the cars below these wield the mace, and those the javelin throw. While thus the thunder of the battle raged, and laboring armies round the works engaged, still in the tent Patroclus sat to tend the good Eurypylus, his wounded friend. He sprinkles healing balms to anguish kind, and adds discourse, the medicine of the mind. But when he saw, ascending up the fleet victorious Troy, then, starting from his seat with bitter groans his sorrows he expressed, he wrings his hands, he beats his manly breast. Though yet thy state require redress, he cries, depart I must, what horrors strike my eyes. Charged with Achilles, high command I go, a mournful witness of this scene of woe. I haste to urge him by his country's care to rise in arms and shine again in war. Perhaps some favoring god his soul may bend, the voice is powerful of a faithful friend. He spoke, and, speaking, swifter than the wind sprung from the tent, and left the war behind. The embodied Greeks the fierce attack sustain, but strive, though numerous, to repulse in vain. Nor could the Trojans, through that firm array force to the fleet and tents the impervious way. As when a shipwright with Palladian art smooths the rough wood and levels every part, with equal hand he guides his whole design by the just rule and the directing line, the martial leaders, with like skill and care, preserved their line and equal kept the war. Brave deeds of arms through all the ranks were tried, and every ship sustained an equal tide. At one proud bark, high-towering o'er the fleet Ajax the great and godlike Hector meet. For one bright prize the matchless chiefs contend, nor this the ships can fire, nor that defend. One kept the shore and one the vessel trod, that fixed as fate, this acted by a god. The son of Clytius in his daring hand, the deck approaching, shakes a flaming brand. But, pierced by Telamon's huge lance, expires, thundering he falls and drops the extinguished fires. Great Hector viewed him with a sad survey, as stretched in dust before the stern he lay. Oh, all of Trojan, all of Lycian race, stand to your arms, maintain this arduous space. Lo, where the son of royal Clytius lies, save his arms, secure his obsequies. This said, his eager javelin sought the foe, but Ajax shunned the meditated blow. Not vainly yet the forceful lance was thrown, it stretched in dust unhappy Lycophron, an exile long, sustained at Ajax' board, a faithful servant to a foreign lord, in peace, and war forever at his side, near his loved master, as he lived he died. From the high poop he tumbles on the sand, and lies a lifeless load along the land. With anguish Ajax views the piercing sight, and thus inflames his brother to the fight. Teucer, behold, extended on the shore our friend, our loved companion. Now no more. Dear as a parent, with a parent's care to fight our wars he left his native air. This death deplored to Hector's rage we owe, revenge, revenge it on the cruel foe. Where are those darts on which the fates attend? And where the bow which Phoebus taught to bend? Impatient Teucer, hastening to his aid, before the chief his ample bow displayed. The well-stored quiver on his shoulders hung, then hissed his arrow, and the bowstring sung. Clitus, Pisner's son, renowned in fame, to thee Polydamas, an honored name, drove through the thickest of the embattled plains the startling steeds, and shook his eager reins. As all on glory ran his ardent mind, the pointed death arrests him from behind. Through his fair neck the thrilling arrow flies, in youth's first bloom reluctantly he dies. Hurled from the lofty seat, at distance far, the headlong coursers spurn his empty car till sad Polydamas the steeds restrained, and gave Astinus to thy careful hand, then, fired to vengeance, rushed amidst the foe, rage edged his sword, and strengthened every blow. Once more bold Teucer, in his country's cause, at Hector's breast a chosen arrow draws, and had the weapon found the destined way, thy fall, great Trojan, had renowned that day. But Hector was not doomed to perish then, the all-wise disposer of the fates of men, imperial Jove, his present death withstands, nor was such glory due to Teucer's hands. At its full stretch as the tough string he drew struck by an arm unseen, it burst in two, down dropped the bow. The shaft with brazen head fell innocent, and on the dust lay dead. The astonished archer to great Ajax cries, some god prevents our destined enterprise, some god, propitious to the Trojan foe, has, from my arm unfailing, struck the bow, and broke the nerve my hands had twined with art, strong to impel the flight of many a dart. Since heaven commands it, Ajax made reply, dismiss the bow, and lay thy arrows by, thy arms no less suffice the lance to wield, and quit the quiver for the ponderous shield. In the first ranks indulge thy thirst of fame, thy brave example shall the rest inflame. Fierce as they are, by long successes vain, to force our fleet, or even a ship to gain, asks toil and sweat and blood. Their utmost might shall find its match, no more. 'Tis ours to fight. Then Teucer laid his faithless bow aside, the fourfold buckler o'er his shoulder tied, on his brave head a crested helm he placed, with nodding horsehair formidably graced, a dart, whose point with brass refulgent shines, the warrior wields, and his great brother joins. This Hector saw, and thus expressed his joy, ye troops of Lycia, Dardanus, and Troy. Be mindful of yourselves, your ancient fame, and spread your glory with the navy's flame. Jove is with us, I saw his hand, but now from the proud archer strike his vaunted bow, indulgent Jove. How plain thy favors shine, when happy nations bear the marks divine. How easy, then, to see the sinking state of realms accursed, deserted, reprobate. Such is the fate of Greece, and such is ours. Behold, ye warriors, and exert your powers. Death is the worst, a fate which all must try, and for our country, 'tis a bliss to die. The gallant man, though slain in fight he be, yet leaves his nation safe. His children free, entails a debt on all the grateful state. His own brave friends shall glory in his fate, his wife live honored, all his race succeed, and late posterity enjoy the deed. This roused the soul in every Trojan breast. The godlike Ajax next his Greeks addressed. How long, ye warriors of the Argive race, to generous Argus what a dire disgrace? How long on these cursed confines will ye lie, yet undetermined, or to live or die? What hopes remain, what methods to retire, if once your vessels catch the Trojan fire? Mark how the flames approach, how near they fall, how Hector calls, and Troy obeys his call. Not to the dance that dreadful voice invites, it calls to death, and all the rage of fights. 'Tis now no time for wisdom or debates, to your own hands are trusted all your fates, and better far in one decisive strife. One day should end our labor or our life, then keep this hard-got inch of barren sands, still pressed, and pressed by such inglorious hands. the listening Grecians feel their leader's flame, and every kindling bosom pants for fame. Then mutual slaughters spread on either side by Hector. Here the Phocian Schedius died, there, pierced by Ajax, sunk Laodamas, chief of the foot of old Antenor's race. Polydamas laid Otis on the sand, the fierce commander of the Epeian band. His lance bold Megs at the victor through the victor, stooping from the death withdrew. That valued life, O Phoebus, was thy care, but Crosmus, bosom took the flying spear. His corpse fell bleeding on the slippery shore, his radiant arms triumphant Megs bore. Dolops, the son of Lampus, rushes on, sprung from the race of old Laomedon, and famed for prowess in a well-fought field, he pierced the center of his sounding shield. But Megs, Phyleus ample breastplate wore, well known in fight on Sel's winding shore, for King Euphetes gave the golden mail, compact and firm with many a jointed scale, which oft, in cities stormed and battles won, had saved the father and now saves the son. Full at the Trojan's head he urged his lance, where the high plumes above the helmet dance, new tinged with Tyrian dye. In dust below, shorn from the crest, the purple honors glow. Meantime their fight the Spartan king surveyed, and stood by Megs' side a sudden aid. Through Dolops' shoulder urged his forceful dart, which held its passage through the panting heart and issued at his breast. With thundering sound the warrior falls, extended on the ground. In rush the conquering Greeks to spoil the slain, but Hector's voice excites his kindred train, the hero most, from Highstown sprung, fierce Melanippus, gallant, brave, and young. He ere to Troy the Grecians crossed the main, fed his large oxen on Percote's plain. But when oppressed, his country claimed his care, returned to Ilion, and excelled in war for this. In Priam's court, he held his place, beloved no less than Priam's royal race. Him Hector singled, as his troops he led, and thus inflamed him, pointing to the dead. Lo, Melanippus! Lo, where Dolops lies, and is it thus our royal kinsman dies? O'ermatched he falls, to two at once a prey, and lo, they bear the bloody arms away. Come on, a distant war no longer wage, but hand to hand thy country's foes engage, till Greece at once, and all her glory end, or Ilion from her towery height descend, heaved from the lowest stone, and bury all in one sad sepulchre, one common fall. Hector this said, rushed forward on the foes, with equal ardor Melanippus glows, then Ajax thus, O Greeks! Respect your fame, respect yourselves, and learn an honest shame. Let mutual reverence mutual warmth inspire, and catch from breast to breast the noble fire. On valor's side the odds of combat lie, the brave live glorious or lamented die, the wretch that trembles in the field of fame meets death, and worse than death, eternal shame. His generous sense he not in vain imparts, it sunk and rooted in the Grecian hearts. They join, they throng, they thicken at his call, and flank the navy with a brazen wall, shields touching shields, in order blaze above, and stop the Trojans, though impelled by Jove. The fiery Spartan first, with loud applause, warms the bold son of Nestor in his cause. Is there, he said, in arms a youth like you, so strong to fight, so active to pursue? Why stand you distant, nor attempt a deed? Lift the bold lance, and make some Trojan bleed. He said, and backward to the lines retired. Forth rushed the youth with martial fury fired, beyond the foremost ranks. His lance he threw, and round the black battalions cast his view. The troops of Troy recede with sudden fear, while the swift javelin hissed along in air. Advancing Melanippus met the dart with his bold breast, and felt it in his heart, thundering he falls. His falling arms resound, and his broad buckler rings against the ground. The victor leaps upon his prostrate prize. Thus on a roe the well-breathed beagle flies, and rends his side. Fresh bleeding with the dart the distant hunter sent into his heart. Observing Hector to the rescue flew, bold as he was, Antilochus withdrew. So when a savage, ranging o'er the plain, has torn the shepherd's dog or shepherd's swain, while conscious of the deed, he glares around, and hears the gathering multitude resound. Timely he flies the yet untasted food, and gains the friendly shelter of the wood. So fears the youth. All Troy with shouts pursue, while stones and darts in mingled tempest flew. But entered in the Grecian ranks, he turns his manly breast, and with new fury burns. Now on the fleet the tides of Trojans drove, fierce to fulfill the stern decrees of Jove, the sire of gods, confirming Thetis' prayer. The Grecian ardor quenched in deep despair. but lifts to glory Troy's prevailing bands, swells all their hearts, and strengthens all their hands. On Ida's top he waits with longing eyes to view the navy blazing to the skies. Then, nor till then, the scale of war shall turn, the Trojans fly, and conquered Ilion burn. These fates revolved in his almighty mind, he raises Hector to the work designed, bids him with more than mortal fury glow, and drives him, like a lightning, on the foe. So Mars, when human crimes for vengeance call, shakes his huge javelin, and whole armies fall. Not with more rage a conflagration rolls, wraps the vast mountains, and involves the poles. He foams with wrath. Beneath his gloomy brow like fiery meteors his red eyeballs glow. The radiant helmet on his temple burns, waves when he nods, and lightens as he turns. For Jove his splendor round the chief had thrown, and cast the blaze of both the hosts on one. Unhappy glories! For his fate was near, due to stern Pallas and Pelides' spear. Yet Jove deferred the death he was to pay, and gave what fate allowed the honors of a day. Now all on fire for fame, his breast, his eyes burn at each foe and single every prize. Still at the closest ranks, the thickest fight, he points his ardor and exerts his might. The Grecian phalanx, moveless as a tower, on all sides battered, yet resist his power. So some tall rock o'erhangs the hoary main, by winds assailed, by billows beat in vain. Unmoved it hears above the tempest blow, and sees the watery mountains break below. Girt in surrounding flames, he seems to fall like fire from Jove, and bursts upon them all. Bursts as a wave that from the cloud impends, and swelled with tempests on the ship descends. White are the decks with foam. The winds aloud howl o'er the masts, and sing through every shroud. Pale, trembling, tired, the sailors freeze with fears, and instant death on every wave appears. So pale the Greeks the eyes of Hector meet, the chief so thunders, and so shakes the fleet. As when a lion, rushing from his den amidst the plain of some wide-watered fen, where numerous oxen, as at ease they feed, at large expatiate o'er the ranker mead, leaps on the herds before the herdsman's eyes. The trembling herdsman far to distance flies, some lordly bull, the rest dispersed and fled. He singles out, arrests, and lays him dead. Thus from the rage of Jove-like Hector flew all Greece in heaps. But when he seized and slew Mycenaean Periphas, a mighty name, in wisdom great, in arms well known to fame, the minister of stern Eurystheus' ire against Alcides, Coprius was his sire. The son redeemed the honors of the race, a son as generous as the sire was base, or all his country's youth conspicuous far in every virtue, or of peace or war, but doomed to Hector's stronger force to yield. Against the margin of his ample shield he struck his hasty foot. His heels upsprung, supine he fell, his brazen helmet rung. On the fallen chief, the invading Trojan pressed, and plunged the pointed javelin in his breast. His circling friends, who strove to guard too late the unhappy hero, fled or shared his fate. Chased from the foremost line, the Grecian train now man the next, receding toward the main. Wedged in one body at the tents they stand, walled round with sterns, a gloomy, desperate band. Now manly shame forbids the inglorious flight, now fear itself confines them to the fight man courage breathes in man. But Nestor most, the sage preserver of the Grecian host, exhorts, adjures, to guard these utmost shores, and by their parents, by themselves implores. O friends, be men, your generous breasts inflame with mutual honor, and with mutual shame. Think of your hopes, your fortunes, all the care your wives, your infants, and your parents share. Think of each living father's reverend head. Think of each ancestor with glory dead absent. By me they speak, by me they sue, they ask their safety, and their fame from you. The gods their fates on this one action lay, and all are lost if you desert the day. He spoke, and round him breathed heroic fires. Minerva seconds what the sage inspires. The mist of darkness Jove around them threw she cleared, restoring all the war to view. A sudden ray shot beaming o'er the plain, and showed the shores, the navy, and the main. Hector they saw, and all who fly or fight, the scene wide opening to the blaze of light. First of the field great Ajax strikes their eyes, his port majestic, and his ample size. A ponderous mace with studs of iron crowned, full 20 cubits long, he swings around. Nor fights like others, fixed to certain stands, but looks a moving tower above the bands. High on the decks with vast gigantic stride, the godlike hero stalks from side to side. So when a horseman from the watery mead, skilled in the manage of the bounding steed, drives 4 fair coursers, practised to obey, to some great city through the public way, safe in his art, as side by side they run, he shifts his seat and vaults from one to one, and now to this, and now to that he flies, admiring numbers follow with their eyes. From ship to ship thus Ajax swiftly flew, no less the wonder of the warring crew. As furious, Hector thundered threats aloud, and rushed enraged before the Trojan crowd. Then swift invades the ships, whose beaky prows lay ranked contiguous on the bending shores, so the strong eagle from his airy height, who marks the swans or cranes' embodied flight, stoops down impetuous, while they light for food, and stooping, darkens with his wings the flood. Jove leads him on with his almighty hand, and breathes fierce spirits in his following band. The warring nations meet, the battle roars, thick beats the combat on the sounding prores. Thou wouldst have thought, so furious was their fire, no force could tame them, and no toil could tire, as if new vigor from new fights they won, and the long battle was but then begun. Greece, yet unconquered, kept alive the war, secure of death, confiding in despair. Troy in proud hopes already viewed the main bright with the blaze, and red with heroes slain. Like strength is felt from hope, and from despair, and each contends as his were all the war. 'Twas thou, bold Hector, whose resistless hand first seized a ship on that contested strand, the same which dead Protesilaus bore, the first that touched the unhappy Trojan shore. For this in arms the warring nations stood, and bathed their generous breasts with mutual blood. No room to poise the lance or bend the bow, but hand to hand, and man to man they grow, wounded they wound, and seek each other's hearts with falchions, axes, swords, and shortened darts. The falchions ring, shields rattle, axes sound, swords flash in air or glitter on the ground. With streaming blood the slippery shores are dyed, and slaughtered heroes swell the dreadful tide. Still raging, Hector with his ample hand grasps the high stern, and gives this loud command. Ajax defending the Greek ships. Haste, bring the flames. That toil of 10 long years is finished, and the day desired appears. This happy day with acclamations greet, bright with destruction of yon hostile fleet. The coward counsels of a timorous throng of reverend dotards checked our glory long. Too long Jove lulled us with lethargic charms, but now in peals of thunder calls to arms. In this great day he crowns our full desires, wakes all our force, and seconds all our fires. He spoke, the warriors at his fierce command pour a new deluge on the Grecian band. Even Ajax paused, so thick the javelins fly, stepped back and doubted or to live or die. Yet where the oars are placed, he stands to wait what chief approaching dares attempt his fate. Even to the last his naval charge defends, now shakes his spear, now lifts and now protends. Even yet, the Greeks with piercing shouts inspires, amidst attacks and deaths and darts and fires. O friends! O heroes! Names forever dear, once sons of Mars and thunderbolts of war. Yet be mindful of your old renown, your great forefathers' virtues and your own. What aids expect you in this utmost strait? What bulwarks rising between you and fate? No aids, no bulwarks your retreat attend, no friends to help, no city to defend. This spot is all you have, to lose or keep there stand the Trojans, and here rolls the deep. 'Tis hostile ground you tread, your native lands far, far from hence, your fates are in your hands. Raging he spoke, nor further wastes his breath, but turns his javelin to the work of death. Whate'er bold Trojan armed his daring hands, against the sable ships with flaming brands, so well the chief his naval weapon sped, the luckless warrior at his stern lay dead. Full 12, the boldest, in a moment fell, sent by great Ajax to the shades of hell. Castor and Pollux. Book 16. Argument. The sixth battle, the axe and death of Patroclus. Patroclus, in pursuance of the request of Nestor in the 11th book, entreats Achilles to suffer him to go to the assistance of the Greeks with Achilles, troops, and armor. He agrees to it, but at the same time charges him to content himself with rescuing the fleet, without further pursuit of the enemy. The armor, horses, soldiers, and officers are described. Achilles offers a libation for the success of his friend, after which Patroclus leads the Myrmidons to battle. The Trojans, at the sight of Patroclus in Achilles' armor, taking him for that hero, are cast into the uttermost consternation. He beats them off from the vessels, Hector himself flies, Sarpedon is killed, though Jupiter was averse to his fate. Several other particulars of the battle are described, in the heat of which Patroclus, neglecting the orders of Achilles, pursues the foe to the walls of Troy, where Apollo repulses and disarms him, Euphorbus wounds him, and Hector kills him, which concludes the book. So warred both armies on the ensanguined shore, while the black vessels smoked with human gore. Meantime Patroclus to Achilles flies, the streaming tears fall copious from his eyes. Not faster, trickling to the plains below, from the tall rock the sable waters flow. Divine Pelides, with compassion moved, thus spoke indulgent to his best beloved. Patroclus, say, what grief thy bosom bears, that flows so fast in these unmanly tears. No girl, no infant whom the mother keeps from her loved breast, with fonder passion weeps, not more the mother's soul, that infant warms, clung to her knees and reaching at her arms, than thou hast mine. Oh, tell me, to what end thy melting sorrows thus pursue thy friend? Grievest thou for me, or for my martial band? Or come sad tidings from our native land? Our fathers live our first, most tender care. Thy good Menodius breathes the vital air, and hoary Peleus yet extends his days, pleased in their age to hear their children's praise. Or may some meaner cause thy pity claim? Perhaps yon relics of the Grecian name, doomed in their ships to sink by fire and sword, and pay the forfeit of their haughty lord. Whate'er the cause, reveal thy secret care, and speak those sorrows which a friend would share. A sigh that instant from his bosom broke, another followed, and Patroclus spoke. Let Greece at length with pity touch thy breast, thyself a Greek, and once of Greeks the best. Lo, every chief that might her fate prevent, lies pierced with wounds, and bleeding in his tent. Eurypylus, Tydides, Atreus' son, and wise Ulysses, at the navy groan more for their country's wounds than for their own. Their pain soft arts of pharmacy can ease, thy breast alone no lenitives appease. May never rage like them my soul enslave, O great and vain, unprofitably brave. Thy country slighted in her last distress, what friend, what man from thee shall hope redress? No men unborn and ages yet behind shall curse that fierce, that unforgiving mind. O man unpitying, if of man thy race, but sure thou spring'st not from a soft embrace, nor ever amorous hero caused thy birth, nor ever tender goddess brought thee forth. Some rugged rock's hard entrails gave thee form, and raging seas produced thee in a storm, a soul well suiting that tempestuous kind, so rough thy manners, so untamed thy mind. If some dire oracle thy breast alarm, if aught from Jove or Thetis stop thy arm, some beam of comfort yet on Greece may shine. If I but lead the Myrmidonian line, clad in thy dreadful arms if I appear, proud Troy shall tremble and desert the war. Without thy person Greece shall win the day, and thy mere image chase her foes away. Pressed by fresh forces, her o'erlabored train shall quit the ships, and Greece respire again. Thus, blind to fate, with supplicating breath thou begg'st his arms, and in his arms thy death. Unfortunately good. A boding sigh thy friend returned, and with it this reply, Patroclus, thy Achilles knows no fears, nor words from Jove nor oracles he hears, nor aught a mother's caution can suggest. The tyrant's pride lies rooted in my breast. My wrongs, my constant thought engage those, my soul oracles inspire my rage. I made him tyrant, gave him power to wrong even me. I felt it, and shall feel it long. The maid, my black-eyed maid, he forced away, due to the toils of many a well-fought day, due to my conquest of her father's reign, due to the votes of all the Grecian train. From me he forced her, me, the bold and brave, disgraced, dishonored, like the meanest slave. But bear we this, the wrongs I grieve are past. 'Tis time our fury should relent at last. I fixed its date. The day I wished appears. How Hector to my ships his battle bears, the flames my eyes, the shouts invade my ears. Go then, Patroclus. Court fair honors charms in Troy's famed fields, and in Achilles' arms. Lead forth my martial Myrmidons to fight. Go save the fleets, and conquer in my right. See the thin relics of their baffled band, at the last edge of yon deserted land. Behold all Ilion on their ships descends, how the cloud blackens, how the storm impends. It was not thus, when, at my sight amazed, Troy saw and trembled, as this helmet blazed. Had not the injurious king our friendship lost, yon ample trench had buried half her host. No camps, no bulwarks now the Trojans fear, those are not dreadful, no Achilles there, no longer flames the lance of Tydeus' son, no more your general calls his heroes on, Hector, alone, I hear. His dreadful breath commands your slaughter or proclaims your death. Yet now, Patroclus, issue to the plain, now save the ships, the rising fires restrain, and give the Greeks to visit Greece again. But heed my words, and mark a friend's command, who trusts his fame and honors in thy hand, and from thy deeds expects the Achaean host shall render back the beauteous maid he lost, rage uncontrolled through all the hostile crew. But touch not Hector, Hector is my due. Though Jove and thunder should command the war, be just, consult my glory and forbear. The fleet once saved, desist from further chase, nor lead to Ilion's walls the Grecian race. Some adverse god thy rashness may destroy, some god, like Phoebus, ever kind to Troy. Let Greece, redeemed from this destructive strait, do her own work, and leave the rest to fate. Oh, would to all the immortal powers above, Apollo, Pallas, and almighty Jove, that not one Trojan might be left alive, and not a Greek of all the race survive, might only we the vast destruction shun, and only we destroy the accursed town. Such conference held the chiefs, while on the strand great Jove with conquest crowned the Trojan band. Ajax no more the sounding storm sustained, so thick the darts an iron tempest rained. On his tired arm the weighty buckler hung, his hollow helm with falling javelins wrung his breath, in quick short pantings, comes and goes, and painful sweat from all his members flows. Spent and o'erpoured, he barely breathes at most, yet scarce an army stirs him from his post, dangers on dangers all around him glow, and toil to toil, and woe succeeds to woe. Say, Muses, throned above the starry frame, how first the navy blazed with Trojan flame. Stern Hector waved his sword, and standing near, where furious Ajax plied his ashen spear, full on the lance a stroke so justly sped, that the broad falchion lopped its brazen head, his pointless spear the warrior shakes in vain, the brazen head falls sounding on the plain. Great Ajax saw, and owned the hand divine, confessing Jove, and trembling at the sign warned he retreats. Then swift from all sides pour the hissing brands, thick streams the fiery shower, o'er the high stern the curling volumes rise, and sheets of rolling smoke involve the skies. Divine Achilles viewed the rising flames, and smote his thigh, and thus aloud exclaims, Arm, arm, Patroclus. Lo, the blaze aspires. The glowing ocean reddens with the fires. Arm, ere our vessels catch the spreading flame, arm, ere the Grecians be no more a name, I haste to bring the troops. The hero said, the friend with ardor and with joy obeyed. He cased his limbs in brass, and first around his manly legs with silver buckles bound the clasping greaves, then to his breast applies the flaming cuirass of 1,000 dyes, emblazed with studs of gold his falchion shone in the rich belt, as in a starry zone. Achilles, shield his ample shoulders spread, Achilles' helmet nodded o'er his head, adorned in all his terrible array, he flashed around intolerable day. Alone untouched, Pelides' javelin stands, not to be poised but by Pelides' hands. From Pelion's shady brow the plant entire old Chiron rent, and shaped it for his sire, whose son's great arm alone the weapon wields, the death of heroes, and the dread of fields. Buckles, the brave Automedon, an honored name, the second to his lord in love and fame, in peace his friend, and partner of the war. The winged coursers harnessed to the car, Xanthus and Balius, of immortal breed sprung from the wind, and like the wind in speed. Whom the winged Harpy, swift Podarge, bore by Zephyr pregnant on the breezy shore, swift Pedasus was added to their side. Once great Aetion S, now Achilles' pride, who, like in strength, in swiftness, and in grace, a mortal courser matched the immortal race. Achilles speeds from tent to tent, and warms his hardy Myrmidons to blood and arms. All breathing death, around the chief they stand, a grim, terrific, formidable band grim as voracious wolves, that seek the springs when scalding thirst their burning bowels rings, when some tall stag, fresh slaughtered in the wood, has drenched their wide insatiate throats with blood, to the black fount they rush, a hideous throng with paunch distended, and with lolling tongue fire fills their eye, their black jaws belch the gore, and gorged with slaughter still they thirst for more. Like furious, rush the Myrmidonian crew, such their dread strength, and such their deathful view. High in the midst the great Achilles stands, directs their order, and the war commands. He, loved of Jove, had launched for Ilion's shores full 50 vessels, manned with 50 oars. 5 chosen leaders the fierce bands obey, himself supreme in valor, as in sway. First marched Menestheus, of celestial birth derived from thee, whose waters wash the earth, divine Sperchius. Jove descended flood, a mortal mother mixing with a god. Such was Menestheus, but miscalled by fame the son of Boris, that espoused the dame. Eutorus next, whom Polymele the gay, famed in the graceful dance, produced today. Her sly Selenius loved. On her would gaze, as with swift step she formed the running maze, to her high chamber from Diana's choir. The god pursued her, urged, and crowned his fire. The son confessed his father's heavenly race, and aired his mother's swiftness in the chase. Strong Echecleus, blessed in all those charms that pleased a god, succeeded to her arms, not conscious of those loves, long hid from fame. With gifts of price he sought and won the dame, her secret offspring to her sire she bare. Her sire caressed him with a parent's care. Pisander followed, matchless in his art to wing the spear, or aim the distant dart. No hand so sure of all the Amathian line, or if a surer, great Patroclus. Thine. The fourth by Phoenix, grave command was graced, Laerces' valiant offspring led the last. Soon as Achilles with superior care had called the chiefs, and ordered all the war, this stern remembrance to his troops he gave. Ye far-famed Myrmidons, ye fierce and brave. Think with what threats you dared the Trojan throng, think what reproach these ears endured so long. Stern son of Peleus. Thus he used to say, while restless, raging, in your ships you lay, O nursed with gall, unknowing how to yield, whose rage defrauds us of so famed a field. If that dire fury must forever burn, what make we here? Return, ye chiefs, return, such were your words, now warriors. Grieve no more, lo there the Trojans, bathe your swords in gore. This day shall give you all your soul demands, glut all your hearts, and weary all your hands. Diana. Thus while he roused the fire in every breast, close and more close the listening cohorts pressed, ranks wedged in ranks. Of arms a steely ring still grows, and spreads, and thickens round the king. As when a circling wall the builder forms of strength defensive against wind and storms, compacted stones the thickening work compose, and round him wide the rising structure grows. So helm to helm, and crest to crest they throng, shield urged on shield, and man drove man along, thick, undistinguished plumes, together joined, float in one sea and wave before the wind. Far o'er the rest in glittering pomp appear, there bold Automedon, Patroclus here, brothers in arms, with equal fury fired, 2 friends, 2 bodies with one soul inspired. But mindful of the gods, Achilles went to the rich coffer in his shady tent. There lay on heaps his various garments rolled, and costly furs and carpets stiff with gold, the presence of the silver-footed dame. From thence he took a bowl of antique frame, which never man had stained with ruddy wine, nor raised in offerings to the power divine, but Peleus, son. And Peleus, son to none, had raised in offerings, but to Jove alone. This tinged with sulphur, sacred first to flame he purged, and washed it in the running stream. Then cleansed his hands, and fixing for a space his eyes on heaven, his feet upon the place of sacrifice, the purple draught he poured forth in the midst, and thus the god implored. O thou supreme, high-throned all height above, O great Pelasgic, Dodonian Jove, who midst surrounding frosts and vapors chill persidst on bleak Dodona's vocal hill, whose groves the Selli, race austere, surround, their feet unwashed, their slumbers on the ground, who hear from rustling oaks thy dark decrees, and catch the fates low-whispered in the breeze. Here, as of old, thou gav'st at Thetis prayer glory to me, and to the Greeks despair. Lo, to the dangers of the fighting field the best, the dearest of my friends, I yield, though still determined, to my ships confined, Patroclus gone, I stay but half behind. Oh, be his guard thy providential care, confirm his heart, and string his arm to war. Pressed by his single force, let Hector see his fame in arms not owing all to me. But when the fleets are saved from foes and fire, let him with conquest and renown retire, preserve his arms, preserve his social train, and safe return him to these eyes again. Great Jove consents to half the chief's request, but heaven's eternal doom denies the rest. To free the fleet was granted to his prayer. His safe return, the winds dispersed in air. Back to his tent, the stern Achilles flies, and waits the combat with impatient eyes. Meanwhile the troops beneath Patroclus' care invade the Trojans and commence the war. As wasps, provoked by children in their play, pour from their mansions by the broad highway in swarms the guiltless traveler engage, whet all their stings, and call forth all their rage, all rise in arms, and with a general cry assert their waxen domes and buzzing progeny. Thus from the tents the fervent legion swarms, so loud their clamors, and so keen their arms, their rising rage Patroclus breath inspires, who thus inflames them with heroic fires. O warriors, partners of Achilles' praise, be mindful of your deeds in ancient days. Your godlike master let your acts proclaim, and add new glories to his mighty name. Think your Achilles sees you fight, be brave, and humble the proud monarch whom you save. Joyful they heard, and kindling as he spoke, flew to the fleet, involved in fire and smoke. From shore to shore the doubling shouts resound, the hollow ships return a deeper sound. The war stood still, and all around them gazed, when great Achilles, shining armor blazed. Troy saw and thought the dread Achilles nigh. At once they see, they tremble, and they fly. Then first thy spear, divine Patroclus, flew where the war raged, and where the tumult grew. Close to the stern of that famed ship, which bore unblessed Protelaus to Ilion's shore, the great Paeonian, bold Pyrrhechum stood, who led his bands from Axius, winding flood. His shoulder blade receives the fatal wound, the groaning warrior pants upon the ground. His troops, that see their country's glory slain, fly diverse, scattered o'er the distant plain. Patroclus' arm forbids the spreading fires, and from the half-burned ship proud Troy retires. Cleared from the smoke the joyful navy lies, in heaps on heaps the foe tumultuous flies. Triumphant Greece her rescued decks ascends, and loud acclaim the starry region rends. So when thick clouds enwrap the mountain's head, o'er heaven's expanse like one black ceiling spread, sudden the thunderer, with a flashing ray, bursts through the darkness, and lets down the day. The hills shine out, the rocks in prospect rise, and streams and vales and forests strike the eyes. The smiling scene wide opens to the sight, and all the unmeasured ether flames with light. But Troy repulsed, and scattered o'er the plains, forced from the navy, yet the fight maintains. Now every Greek some hostile hero slew, but still the foremost, bold Patroclus flew, as Areilycus had turned him round. Sharp in his thigh he felt the piercing wound, the brazen-pointed spear, with vigor thrown, the thigh transfixed, and broke the brittle bone. Headlong he fell. Next, though as was thy chance, thy breast, unarmed, received the Spartan lance. Phyllide's dart, as Amphitus drew nigh, his blow prevented, and transpierced his thigh, tore all the brawn, and rent the nerves away in darkness, and in death the warrior lay. In equal arms 2 sons of Nestor stand, and 2 bold brothers of the Lycian band. By great Antilochus, Atymnius dies, pierced in the flank, lamented youth. He lies, kind Mares, bleeding in his brother's wound, defends the breathless carcass on the ground. Furious he flies, his murderer to engage. But godlike Thrasymede prevents his rage, between his arm and shoulder aims a blow. His arm falls spouting on the dust below, he sinks, with endless darkness covered o'er, and vents his soul, effused with gushing gore. Slain by 2 brothers, thus 2 brothers bleed, Sarpedon's friends, Amisodorus, seed Amisodorus, who, by Furies led the bane of men, abhorred Chimera bred, skilled in the dart in vain, his sons expire, and pay the forfeit of their guilty sire. Stopped in the tumult Cleobulus lies, beneath Aurelius' arm, a living prize not long the Trojan stood. The thirsty falchion drank his reeking blood. Plunged in his throat the smoking weapon lies, black death, and fate unpitying, seal his eyes. Amid the ranks, with mutual thirst of fame, Lycon the brave, and fierce Peneleus came. In vain their javelins at each other flew, now, met in arms, their eager swords they drew. On the plumed crest of his Boeotian foe the daring Lycon aimed a noble blow, the sword broke short. But his, Peneleus sped full on the juncture of the neck and head. The head, divided by a stroke so just, hung by the skin, the body sunk to dust. O'ertaken Nemas by Merion bleeds, pierced through the shoulder as he mounts his steeds. Back from the car he tumbles to the ground. His swimming eyes eternal shades surround. Next Eurymas was doomed his fate to feel. His opened mouth received the Cretan steel. Beneath the brain the point a passage tore, crashed the thin bones, and drowned the teeth in gore. His mouth, his eyes, his nostrils pour a flood. He sobs his soul out in the gush of blood. As when the flocks neglected by the swain, or kids, or lambs, lie scattered o'er the plain, a troop of wolves the unguarded charge survey, and rend the trembling, unresisting prey. Thus on the foe the Greeks impetuous came. Troy fled, unmindful of her former fame. But still at Hector godlike Ajax aimed, still, pointed at his breast, his javelin flamed. The Trojan chief, experienced in the field, o'er his broad shoulders spread the massy shield, observed the storm of darts the Grecians pour, and on his buckler caught the ringing shower. He sees for Greece the scale of conquest rise, yet stops and turns, and saves his loved allies. As when the hand of Jove a tempest forms, and rolls the cloud to blacken heaven with storms, dark o'er the fields the ascending vapor flies, and shades the sun, and blots the golden skies. So from the ships, along the dusky plain, dire flight and terror drove the Trojan train. Even Hector fled. Through heads of disarray the fiery coursers forced their lord away, while far behind his Trojans fall confused, wedged in the trench, in one vast carnage bruised, chariots on chariots roll. The clashing spokes shock, while the madding steeds break short their yokes. In vain they labor up the steepy mound, their charioteers lie foaming on the ground. Fierce on the rear, with shouts Patroclus flies, tumultuous clamor fills the fields and skies, thick drifts of dust involve their rapid flight, clouds rise on clouds, and heaven is snatched from sight. The affrighted steeds their dying lords cast down, scour o'er the fields, and stretch to reach the town. Loud o'er the rout was heard the victor's cry, where the war bleeds, and where the thickest die, where horse and arms and chariots lie o'erthrown, and bleeding heroes under axles groan. No stop, no check, the steeds of Peleus knew, from bank to bank the immortal coursers flew. High bounding o'er the fosse, the whirling car smokes through the ranks, o'erdakes the flying war, and thunders after Hector. Hector flies, Patroclus shakes his lance, but fate denies. Not with less noise, with less impetuous force, the tide of Trojans urge their desperate course, than when in autumn Jove his fury pours, and earth is loaden with incessant showers. When guilty mortals break the eternal laws, or judges, bribed, betray the righteous cause. From their deep beds he bids the rivers rise, and opens all the floodgates of the skies. The impetuous torrents from their hills obey, whole fields are drowned, and mountains swept away, loud roars the deluge till it meets the main. And trembling man sees all his labors vain. And now the chief, the foremost troops repelled, back to the ships his destined progress held, bore down half Troy in his resistless way, and forced the rooted ranks to stand the day. Between the space where silver Simois flows, where lay the fleets, and where the ramparts rose, all grim in dust and blood Patroclus stands, and turns the slaughter on the conquering bands. First Praunus died beneath his fiery dart, which pierced below the shield his valiant heart. The store was next, who saw the chief appear, and fell the victim of his coward fear. Shrunk up he sat, with wild and haggard eye, nor stood to combat, nor had force to fly. Patroclus marked him as he shunned the war, and with unmanly tremblings shook the car, and dropped the flowing reins. Him twixt the jaws the javelin sticks, and from the chariot draws. As on a rock that overhangs the main, an angler, studious of the line and cane, some mighty fish draws panting to the shore, not with less ease the barbed javelin bore the gaping dastard. As the spear was shook, he fell, and life his heartless breast forsook. Next on Euryalus he flies. A stone, large as a rock, was by his fury thrown. Full on his crown the ponderous fragment flew, and burst the helm and cleft the head in two. Prone to the ground the breathless warrior fell, and death involved him with the shades of hell. Then lo in dust Epaltes, Achilles, lie Iphias, Evippus, Polymelus, die Amphotrus and Eurymas succeed, and last Telepolemus and Pyres bleed. Where'er he moves, the growing slaughter spread in heaps on heaps a monument of dead. When now Sarpedon his brave friends beheld groveling in dust, and gasping on the field, with this reproach his flying host he warms. O stain to honor! O disgrace to arms! Forsake, inglorious, the contended plain, this hand unaided shall the war sustain. The task be mine this hero's strength to try, who mows whole troops and makes an army fly. He spake, and speaking leaps from off the car, Patroclus lights and sternly waits the war. As when two vultures on the mountain's height stoop with resounding pinions to the fight. They cuff, they tear, they raise a screaming cry. The desert echoes, and the rocks reply. The warriors thus opposed in arms, engage with equal clamors and with equal rage. Jove viewed the combat, whose event foreseen, he thus bespoke his sister and his queen. The hour draws on. The destinies ordain my godlike son shall press the Phrygian plain. Already on the verge of death he stands, his life is owed to fierce Patroclus' hands. What passions in a parent's breast debate? Say, shall I snatch him from impending fate, and send him safe to Lycia, distant far from all the dangers and the toils of war, or to his doom my bravest offspring yield, and fatten, with celestial blood, the field? Then thus the goddess with the radiant eyes, what words are these, O sovereign of the skies? Short is the date prescribed to mortal man, shall Jove for one extend the narrow span, whose bounds were fixed before his race began. How many sons of gods, foredoomed to death, before proud Ilion must resign their breath? Were thine exempt, debate would rise above, and murmuring powers condemn their partial Jove. Give the bold chief a glorious fate in fight, and when the ascending soul has winged her flight, let sleep and death convey, by thy command, the breathless body to his native land. His friends and people, to his future praise, a marble tomb and pyramid shall raise, and lasting honors to his ashes give. His fame, tease all the dead can have, shall live. She said, the cloud compeller, overcome assents to fate and ratifies the doom. Then touched with grief, the weeping heavens distilled a shower of blood o'er all the fatal field. The god, his eyes averting from the plain, laments his son, predestined to be slain, far from the Lycian shores, his happy native reign. Now met in arms, the combatants appear, each heaved the shield, and poised the lifted spear. From strong Patroclus' hand the javelin fled, and past the groin of valiant Thrasymede, the nerves unbraced no more his bulk sustain. He falls, and falling bites the bloody plain. Two sounding darts the Lycian leader threw, the first aloof with erring fury flew, the next transpierced Achilles' mortal steed. The generous Pedasus of Theban breed, fixed in the shoulder's joint, he reeled around, rolled in the bloody dust, and pawed the slippery ground. His sudden fall the entangled harness broke, each axle crackled, and the chariot shook. When bold Automedon, to disengage the starting coursers and restrain their rage, divides the traces with his sword, and freed the encumbered chariot from the dying steed. The rest move on, obedient to the rein. The car rolls slowly o'er the dusty plain. The towering chiefs to fiercer fight advance, and first Sarpedon whirled his weighty lance, which o'er the warrior's shoulder took its course, and spent in empty air its dying force. Not so Patroclus, never-erring dart, aimed at his breast it pierced a mortal part, where the strong fibers bind the solid heart. Then as the mountain oak or poplar tall or pine, fit mast for some great admiral, nods to the axe, till with a groaning sound it sinks and spreads its honors on the ground, thus fell the king. And laid on earth supine, before his chariot stretched his form divine. He grasped the dust disdained with streaming gore, and pale in death lay groaning on the shore. So lies a bull beneath the lion's paws, while the grim savage grinds with foamy jaws the trembling limbs, and sucks the smoking blood. Deep groans and hollow roars rebellow through the wood. Then to the leader of the Lycian band the dying chief addressed his last command. Glaucus, be bold. Thy task be first to dare the glorious dangers of destructive war, to lead my troops, to combat at their head, incite the living and supply the dead. Tell them, I charged them with my latest breath, not unrevenged to bear Sarpedon's death. What grief, what shame, must Glaucus undergo, if these spoiled arms adorn a Grecian foe? Then as a friend and as a warrior fight, defend my body, conquer in my right, that, taught by great examples, all may try like thee to vanquish or like me to die. He ceased. The fates suppressed his laboring breath, and his eyes darkened with the shades of death. The insulting victor with disdain bestrode the prostrate prince, and on his bosom trod, then drew the weapon from his panting heart. The reeking fibers clinging to the dart, from the wide wound gushed out a stream of blood, and the soul issued in the purple flood. His flying steeds the Myrmidons detain, unguided now, their mighty master slain. All impotent of aid, with grief unhappy Glaucus heard the dying chief, his painful arm, yet useless with the smart inflicted late by Teucer's deadly dart, supported on his better hand he stayed. To Phoebus then, 'twas all he could, he prayed. All-seeing monarch, whether Lycia's coast, or sacred Ilion, thy bright presence boast, powerful alike to ease the wretch's smart, oh hear me. God of every healing art. Lo, stiff with clotted blood and pierced with pain that thrills my arm and shoots through every vein, I stand unable to sustain the spear, and sigh at distance from the glorious war. Low in the dust is great Sarpedon laid, nor Jove vouchsafed his hapless offspring aid. But thou, O God of health, thy succor lend to guard the relics of my slaughtered friend, for thou, though distant, canst restore my might, to head my Lycians and support the fight. Apollo heard, and, suppliant as he stood, his heavenly hand restrained the flux of blood. He drew the dollars from the wounded part, and breathed a spirit in his rising heart. Renewed by art divine, the hero stands, and owns the assistance of immortal hands. First to the fight his native troops he warms, then loudly calls on Troy's vindictive arms. With ample strides he stalks from place to place. Now fires Agenor, now Polydamas, Aeneas next, and Hector he accosts, inflaming thus the rage of all their hosts. What thoughts, regardless chief, thy breast employ? O too forgetful of the friends of Troy. Those generous friends, who, from their country far, breathed their brave souls out in another's war. See, where in dust the great Sarpedon lies, in action valiant and in counsel wise, who guarded right and kept his people free, to all his Lycians lost and lost to thee. Stretched by Patroclus, arm on yonder plains, O save from hostile rage his loved remains. Ah, let not Greece his conquered trophies boast, nor on his course revenge her heroes lost. He spoke, each leader in his grief partook, Troy at the loss, through all her legions shook. Transfixed with deep regret, they view o'erthrown at once his country's pillar, and their own, a chief, who led to Troy's beleaguered wall a host of heroes, and outshine them all. Fired they rush on, first Hector seeks the foes, and with superior vengeance greatly glows. But o'er the dead the fierce Patroclus stands, and rousing Ajax, rouse the listening bands. Heroes, be men, be what you were before, or weigh the great occasion and be more. The chief who taught our lofty walls to yield lies pale in death, extended on the field. To guard his body Troy in numbers flies, tease half the glory to maintain our prize. Haste, strip his arms, the slaughter round him spread, and send the living Lycians to the dead. The heroes kindle at his fierce command, the martial squadrons close on either hand. Here Troy and Lycia charge with loud alarms, Thessalia there, and Greece, oppose their arms. With horrid shouts they circle round the slain, the clash of armor rings o'er all the plain. Great Jove, to swell the horrors of the fight, o'er the fierce armies pours pernicious night, and round his son confounds the warring hosts, his fate ennobling with a crowd of ghosts. Now Greece gives way, and great Epigeus falls, Agaclius, son, from Beautium's lofty walls, who chased for murder thence a suppliant came to Peleus, and the silver-footed dame, now sent to Troy, Achilles, arms to aid. He pays due vengeance to his kinsman's shade. Soon as his luckless hand had touched the dead, a rock's large fragment thundered on his head. Hurled by Hectorian force, it cleft in twain his shattered helm, and stretched him o'er the slain. Fierce to the van of fight Patroclus came, and, like an eagle darting at his game, sprung on the Trojan and the Lycian band. What grief thy heart, what fury urged thy hand, O generous Greek? When with full vigor thrown, at Esthanelos flew the weighty stone, which sunk him to the dead. When Troy, too near that arm, drew back, and Hector learned to fear. Far as an able hand a lance can throw, or at the lists, or at the fighting foe, so far the Trojans from their lines retired till Glaucus, turning, all the rest inspired. Then Bathycleus fell beneath his rage, the only hope of Chalcon's trembling age. Wide o'er the land was stretched his large domain, with stately seats and riches blessed in vain. Him, bold with youth, and eager to pursue the flying Lycians, Glaucus met and slew, pierced through the bosom with a sudden wound he fell, and falling made the fields resound. The Achaeans' sorrow for their heroes slain, With conquering shouts the Trojans shake the plain and crowd to spoil the dead. The Greeks oppose, an iron circle round the carcass grows. Then brave Laogonus resigned his breath, dispatched by Merion to the shades of death. On Ida's holy hill he made abode, the priest of Jove, and honored like his god. Between the jaw and ear the javelin went, the soul, exhaling, issued at the vent. His spear Aeneas at the victor threw, who stooping forward from the death withdrew. The lance hissed harmless o'er his covering shield, and trembling struck and rooted in the field, there yet scarce spent. It quivers on the plain, sent by the great Aeneas' arm in vain. Swift as thou art, the raging hero cries, and skilled in dancing to dispute the prize, my spear, the destined passage had it found, had fixed thy active vigor to the ground. O valiant leader of the Dardan host! Insulted Merion thus retorts the boast, strong as you are, 'tis mortal force you trust, an arm as strong may stretch thee in the dust. And if to this my lance thy fate be given, vain are thy vaunts. Success is still from heaven, this instant sends thee down to Pluto's coast, mine is the glory, his thy parting ghost. O friend Menodius, son this answer gave, with words to combat, ill befits the brave, not empty boasts the sons of Troy repel, your swords must plunge them to the shades of hell. To speak beseems the council, but to dare in glorious action is the task of war. This said, Patroclus to the battle flies, great Merion follows, and new shouts arise. Shields, helmets rattle as the warriors close, and thick and heavy sounds the storm of blows. As through the shrilling vale or mountain ground, the labors of the woodman's axe resound, blows following blows are heard re-echoing wide, while crackling forests fall on every side. Thus echoed all the fields with loud alarms, so fell the warriors, and so rung their arms. Now great Sarpedon on the sandy shore, his heavenly form defaced with dust and gore, and stuck with darts by warring heroes shed, lies undistinguished from the vulgar dead. His long-disputed course the chiefs enclose, on every side the busy combat grows, thick as beneath some shepherd's thatched abode, the pails high foaming with a milky flood, the buzzing flies, a persevering train, incessant swarm and chaste return again. Jove viewed the combat with a stern survey, and eyes that flashed intolerable day. Fixed on the field his sight, his breast debates the vengeance due and meditates the fates, whether to urge their prompt effect, and call the force of Hector to Patroclus fall, this instant see his short-lived trophies won, and stretch him breathless on his slaughtered son, or yet, with many a soul's untimely flight, augment the fame and horror of the fight. To crown Achilles, valiant friend with praise at length he dooms, and that his last of days shall set in glory, bids him drive the foe, nor unattended see the shades below. Then Hector's mind he fills with dire dismay. He mounts his car and calls his hosts away. Sunk with Troy's heavy fates, he sees decline the scales of Jove, and pants with awe divine. Then nor before the hardy Lycians fled, and left their monarch with the common dead. Around, in heaps on heaps, a dreadful wall of carnage rises as the heroes fall. So Jove decreed. At length the Greeks obtain the prize contested, and despoil the slain. The radiant arms are by Patroclus born Patroclus, ships the glorious spoils adorn. Then thus to Phoebus, in the realms above, spoke from his throne the cloud-compelling Jove, "Descend, my Phoebus, on the Phrygian plain, and from the fight convey Sarpedon slain, then bathe his body in the crystal flood, with dust dishonored, and deformed with blood o'er all his limbs ambrosial odors shed, and with celestial robes adorn the dead. Those rites discharged, his sacred course bequeath to the soft arms of silent sleep and death. They to his friends the immortal charge shall bear, his friends a tomb and pyramid shall rear. What honor mortals after death receive, those unavailing honors we may give. Sleep and death conveying the body of Sarpedon to Lycia. Apollo bows, and from Mount Ida's height, swift to the field precipitates his flight. Thence from the war the breathless hero bore, veiled in a cloud, to silver Simois shore. There bathed his honorable wounds, and dressed his manly members in the immortal vest, and with perfumes of sweet ambrosial dews restores his freshness, and his form renews. Then sleep and death, two twins of winged race of matchless swiftness, but of silent pace, received Sarpedon at the god's command, and in a moment reached the Lycian land. The the course amidst his weeping friends they laid, where endless honors wait the sacred shade. Meanwhile Patroclus pours along the plains, with foaming coursers, and with loosened reins. Fierce on the Trojan and the Lycian crew, blind to fate. Thy headlong fury flew. Against what fate and powerful Jove ordained vain was thy friend's command, thy courage vain. For he, the god, whose counsels uncontrolled dismay the mighty, and confound the bold, the god who gives, resumes, and orders all, he urged thee on, and urged thee on to fall. Who first, brave hero, by that arm was slain, who last beneath thy vengeance pressed the plain, when heaven itself thy fatal fury led, and called to fill the number of the dead. Addressed first, Autonous then succeeds, Echeclus follows, next young Megas bleeds, Epistor, Melanippus, bite the ground, the slaughter, Elasus and Mulius crowned. Then sunk Pylartes to eternal night, the rest, dispersing, trust their fates to flight. Now Troy had stooped beneath his matchless power, but flaming Phoebus kept the sacred tower. Thrice at the battlements Patroclus struck, his blazing aegis thrice Apollo shook. He tried the fourth, when, bursting from the cloud, a more than mortal voice was heard aloud. Patroclus, cease, this heaven-defended wall defies thy lance. Not fated yet to fall, thy friend, thy greater far, it shall withstand. Troy shall not stoop even to Achilles' hand. So spoke the god who darts celestial fires. The Greek obeys him, and with awe retires. While Hector, checking at the Scaean gates his panting coursers, in his breast debates, or in the field his forces to employ, or draw the troops within the walls of Troy. Thus while he thought, beside him Phoebus stood, in Asius shape, who reigned by Sangar's flood, thy brother Hecuba. From Dymas sprung, a valiant warrior, haughty, bold, and young. Thus he accosts him. What a shameful sight! God, is it Hector that forbears the fight? Were thine my vigor this successful spear, should soon convince thee of so false a fear. Turn thee to the field of fame, and in Patroclus, blood efface thy shame. Perhaps Apollo shall thy arms succeed, and heaven ordains him by thy lance to bleed. So spoke the inspiring god, then took his flight, and plunged amidst the tumult of the fight. He bids Cebrian drive the rapid car, the lash resounds, the coursers rush to war. The god the Grecians, sinking souls depressed, and poured swift spirits through each Trojan breast. Patroclus lights, impatient for the fight, a spear his left, a stone employs his right. With all his nerves he drives it at the foe. Pointed above and rough and gross below, the falling ruin crushed Cebrian's head, the lawless offspring of King Priam's bed, his front, brows, eyes, one undistinguished wound. The bursting balls drop sightless to the ground. The charioteer, while yet he held the reins struck from the car, falls headlong on the plain. To the dark shades the soul unwilling glides, while the proud victor thus his fall derides. Good heaven! What active feats yon artist shows! What skillful divers are our Phrygian foes! Mark with what ease they sink into the sand. Pity that all their practice is by land. Then rushing sudden on his prostrate prize, to spoil the carcase fierce Patroclus flies, swift as a lion, terrible and bold. That sweeps the field, depopulates the fold, pierced through the dauntless heart, then tumbles slain, and from his fatal courage finds his bane. At once bold Hector leaping from his car, defends the body, and provokes the war. Thus for some slaughtered hind, with equal rage, two lordly rulers of the wood engage, stung with fierce hunger, each the prey invades, and echoing roars rebellow through the shades. Stern Hector fastens on the warrior's head, and by the foot Patroclus drags the dead, while all around, confusion, rage, and fright mix the contending hosts in mortal fight. So pent by hills, the wild winds roar aloud in the deep bosom of some gloomy wood, leaves, arms, and trees, aloft in air are blown. The broad oaks crackle, and the sylvans groan this way and that, the rattling thicket bends, and the whole forest in one crash descends. Not with less noise, with less tumultuous rage, in dreadful shock the mingled hosts engage. Darts showered on darts, now round the carcase ring, now flights of arrows bounding from the string, stones follow stones. Some clatter on the fields, some hard and heavy, shake the sounding shields. But where the rising whirlwind clouds the plains, sunk in soft dust the mighty chief remains, and, stretched in death, forgets the guiding reins. Now flaming from the zenith, Sol had driven his fervid orb through half the vault of heaven, while on each host with equal tempests fell the showering darts, and numbers sank to hell. But when his evening wheels o'erhung the main, glad conquest rested on the Grecian train. Then from amidst the tumult and alarms, they draw the conquered course and radiant arms. Then rash Patroclus with new fury glows, and breathing slaughter pours amid the foes. Thrice on the press like Mars himself he flew, and thrice 3 heroes at each onset slew. There ends thy glory. There the fates entwine the last, black remnant of so bright a line. Apollo dreadful stops thy middle way, death calls, and heaven allows no longer day. For lo, the god in dusky clouds enshrined, approaching dealt a staggering blow behind. The weighty shock his neck and shoulders feel, his eyes flash sparkles, his stunned senses reel in giddy darkness. Far to distance flung, his bounding helmet on the champaign rung. Achilles' plume is stained with dust and gore, that plume which never stooped to earth before, long used, untouched, in fighting fields to shine, and shade the temples of the mad divine. Jove dooms it now on Hector's helm to nod, not long, for fate pursues him and the god. His spear in shivers falls, his ample shield drops from his arm, his baldric strows the field, the corslet his astonished breast forsakes, loose is each joint. Each nerve with horror shakes, stupid he stares, and all assistless stands, such is the force of more than mortal hands. A Dardan youth there was, well known to fame, from Panthus sprung, Euphorbus was his name, famed for the manage of the foaming horse, skilled in the dart, and matchless in the course. Full 20 nights he tumbled from the car, while yet he learned his rudiments of war. His venturous spear first drew the hero's gore, he struck, he wounded, but he durst no more. Nor, though disarmed, Patroclus' fury stood, but swift withdrew the long-protended wood, and turned him short, and heard it in the crowd. Thus, by an arm divine and mortal spear, wounded at once, Patroclus yields to fear, retires for succor to his social train, and flies the fate, which heaven decreed, in vain. Stern Hector, as the bleeding chief he views, breaks through the ranks and his retreat pursues. The lance arrests him with a mortal wound, he falls, earth thunders, and his arms resound. With him all Greece was sunk. That moment, all her yet surviving heroes seemed to fall. So, scorched with heat, along the desert score, the roaming lion meets a bristly boar fast by the spring. They both dispute the flood with flaming eyes and jaws besmeared with blood. At length the sovereign savage wins the strife, and the torn boar resigns his thirst and life. Patroclus thus, so many chiefs o'erthrown, so many lives effused, expires his own. As dying now at Hector's feet he lies, he sternly views him, and triumphant cries, "Lie there, Patroclus, and with thee the joy thy pride once promised, of subverting Troy, the fancied scenes of Ilion wrapped in flames, and thy soft pleasures served with captive dames. Unthinking man, I fought those towers to free, and guard that beauteous race from lords like thee. But thou a prey to vultures shalt be made. Thy own Achilles cannot lend thee aid, though much at parting that great chief might say, and much enjoin thee this important day. Return not, my brave friend, perhaps he said, without the bloody arms of Hector dead." He spoke, Patroclus marched, and thus he sped. Supine and wildly gazing on the skies, with faint, expiring breath, the chief replies, "Vain boaster, cease and know the powers divine. Jove's and Apollo's is this deed, not thine. To heaven is owed whate'er your own you call, and heaven itself disarmed me ere my fall. Had 20 mortals, each thy match in might, opposed me fairly, they had sunk in fight. By fate and Phoebus was I first o'erthrown, Euphorbus next, the third mean part thy own. But thou, imperious, hear my latest breath, the gods inspire it, and it sounds thy death. Insulting man, thou shalt be soon as I, black fate o'erhangs thee, and thy hour draws nigh. Even now on life's last verge I see thee stand, I see thee fall, and by Achilles' hand." He faints, the soul unwilling wings her way, the beauteous body left a load of clay, flits to the lone, uncomfortable coast, a naked, wandering, melancholy ghost. Then Hector pausing, as his eyes he fed on the pale carcase, thus addressed the dead. "From whence this boding speech, the stern decree of death denounced, or why denounced to me? Why not as well Achilles, fate be given to Hector's lance? Who knows the will of heaven? Pensive he said, then pressing as he lay his breathless bosom, tore the lance away, and upwards cast the course. The reeking spear he shakes, and charges the bold charioteer. But swift Automedon, with loosened reins, wrapped in the chariot or the distant plains, far from his rage the immortal coursers drove. The immortal coursers were the gift of Jove. Aesculapius. Book 17. Argument,